My name is Professor Engineer Kirimi Kiriamite, the Center Leader of Incubation Center, which is under PTRI. PTRI, it is a phytochemical, textile, and renewable energy. One of the work that we do is to try to make sure that the research work and the innovation work which has been done in the university in the area of PTRI, they are commercialized and can be able to help the society. One of the things that we have done, it is the dryer, which we call the ethanol dryer. The ethanol dryer is a technology which we are using to make sure that it can dry the maize and it can dry other things. The ethanol dryer, which we have worked with German donors and also the World Bank, it is able to dry maize to below 13 moisture content, which is required by our millers.
Most Kenyans love their ugali to bits that some cannot afford to spend a single day without partaking of it. Quite a number of consumers of ugali buy their maize flour from supermarkets or nearby shops within their estates or villages. Some buy already dried maize grain and merely process it into flour at the nearby maize mills. But as you enjoy your favorite meal of ugali with beef, chicken, or fish stew, name them, have you once stopped and reflected about the farmer who produces the maize that you so much endear? Trans Nzoia County, headquartered in Kitale, is Kenya's bread basket, and maize growing remains its key economic activity. In this region, farmers go through thick and thin to grow maize and finally have it ready for human consumption. As they carry on with their grueling trade to ensure that every Kenyan is food secure, the vagaries of nature, especially during the post-harvest season, usually have a thorough beating on their produce, making them incur insurmountable losses. The unpredictable weather patterns leading to heavy downpour and whirling windstorms during harvesting and sun-drying of the maize remains the Herculean task to farmers, coupled with poor or unavailable storage facilities.
Historically, according to the Net Department, we get rains from March through November. However, in as much as we still get those rains, but when it comes to temperatures have risen over time. Earlier on, maximum used to be that's in mid-70s, 80s. Maximum used to be 25 degrees centigrade. However, these days, sometimes we go up to 35 degrees centigrade. And because of the increase in temperature, we grow mainly maize. Maize matures far earlier than it used to be. Because the days I'm talking about, or the years I'm talking about, the period, you could plant in March, that's mid-March, then harvest from November and through January, February. But these days, maize matures in September, October. And during that period of time, there is a lot of rain. So what does it mean? When maize is mature, it begins to die. That is the stalk. So there is lodging, and when it lodges, tendency is maize will rot or germinate on the farm, and that's not what we want.
Mvua ikikuja kama mahindi pato ingali greenish, ilale chini, huwa inaosa sababu ichasimama. Ilikuja na mawe ndiye ikaifanya hivi, mingi imeosa. Niliona nikikaa nayo kwa shamba site ningoje kuwe moisture 13, ningepoteza karibu yote. Sasa nimeamua nitoe yote, nitoe ikiwa hivi hata kama ni unyevu, ni select alafu ni ile grade 1 nipeleke kwa trial, na ile grade 2 ni kongoe, ni chisoti naye na ile yenye meosa naye nianike, nitapata mtu mwenye anataka kulisha mifuko yake kama nguruwe ama nini, nimuhusie. Alafu ndio nikimutu kimaisha next year. Ndio tumeona tuko na damage mingi hiyo.
If now a farmer decides to harvest early when the maize is at physiological stage, physiologically mature, then what it means is he has to pay more for drying of that maize. And if one maybe doesn't have the cash to do that, or good storage facilities, then the post-harvest losses increase. Generally, we'll be talking about 30% losses. However, this is likely to go up if we don't put in place mitigation activities. We are likely to get more than what we are talking about. In the county, we normally have around 5 million bucks. If it's a good year, 5.5, 5.6. But it is a bad year, like this year, it's a bit bad because rains were not good. Then we'll get around 4.8 million bucks. Now, let's talk about an average of 5 million bucks times 30%. We are talking about what? Talking about 450,000 bucks. That is the loss. Now, when that loss multiplied by the amount of money per bag, which is around 3,000 shillings, that's great loss. It's running in billions of shillings.
The labor-intensive nature of harvesting and sun-drying of maize makes it costly to farmers, in addition to the high cost of farm inputs during planting. All these factors make maize farming not a trade for the faint-hearted, as the farmers and the farmhands endure the pounding rains and the scorching sunshine during harvest and sun-drying of maize. These factors lead to a prolonged sun-drying period that is laborious and quite strenuous. To this endeavor, farmers should be given standing ovations for their unrelenting spirit that ensures we get food on our table, come rain, come sunshine. The poor handling of maize during harvest and insufficient storage facilities in rainy seasons compromise the quality of grain, leading to discoloring, growth of mold, and worse still, the contamination by aflatoxins that are harmful to both humans and livestock.
Most of the maize in Trans Nzoia, we harvest them when we are having short rains. And in that period, you cannot leave your maize in the field. We harvest them as it's raining. Even as right now you can see. We are harvesting and it's raining. So it's a challenge. As you harvest, you are transporting the maize from the field to the store when it's already raining. If you don't have enough store and enough capacity where you can air them before you put them to store, you bring when it is already rained on. The impact it have on the quality of the maize, they will start to change color, and some of them will rot. When it rot, it will affect the maize. You will find that when you harvest, if you are supposed to harvest like 100 bags, you will harvest 80 bags which are good and 20% which are affected with the rotten.
Mwaka huu tumejaribu kupanda hii eka 5 ya mahindi. Ilianza mzuri. Tulipanda na eka 5. Kwa eka nilitumia 2 packs of TAP. Nikarudi nikaweka ammonia 2 packs. CN nikaweka 2 packs. Kwa eka 5 nimetoa mahindi gunia 305. 305. Lakini nikiona nina select sijui grade 1 nitapata ngapi ndio nirudi grade 2. Lakini nimeona ni kama tutakawana juu ya huyu mvua yenye imekuja part B katikati. Almost nitapoteza kitu kama 70 packs or 80.
When you bring them to the store, some of them are already rotten and the other ones are okay. So when you mix them, the ones that are rotten affect the ones that are not rotten. The common mwananchi, like the general farmer, doesn't have enough stores. So you find that when they are harvesting from the store, they just have to put the maize either on a canvas, and then as it rains, it's very difficult to handle it. In order to dry to come to the required moisture so that you can shell and keep it safe, when you have rains, it takes longer to get that required moisture content. Like if you have like one canvas and somebody has two, you will find that the one that has two will air his maize and they will dry than the one that has one canvas. You will be forced to come and sun dry the maize before you take them back to the store. And you find that the rains, like here in Trans Nzoia, they are coming at around noon, and maybe all over the night, the previous one, the rains has been training. So it is very difficult. You find that the where you are supposed to air the maize, it is wet, and if you put the canvas, you only air for around 2 hours, and that was not enough. So it will be the period for airing the maize, it will be longer as when you have no rains.
Na chini kama tena kuna unyevu, ukianika mahali imelala na hema, so unajua inamea. Sasa tena una root damages, unakuwa na damages. Hata hiyo grade 1 kama tumechakua hivi, kama tunaanika nje, tena tutakawana na maozo ndani.
The government agencies such as National Cereals and Produce Board, that is a key player in the processing of grains, is not adequately resourced to handle the devastating menace of vagaries of nature, especially during the post-harvest season. Additionally, agriculture sector is devolved to counties, and county governments face numerous challenges, among them inadequate financing. Kenya Plant Health Inspectorate Services, a government parastatal whose responsibility is to assure the quality of agricultural inputs and produce to prevent adverse impacts on the economy, the environment and human health, is alive to this challenge.
The quality of the seed begins with the farmer and it ends up with the company. So the challenges that are facing the seed industry is the financial capacity. Now, when I mean the financial capacity, it is translated from the company to the farmer. And so there are several challenges that are interacted together with the company and the farmer. Also is when they are purchasing the inputs, when they are managing the crop because of diseases and pests, when they are transporting the crop to come to the company, especially where we have now, this is a place where the seed is handled for drying and then shelling. So now, when it reaches that stage, the farmer is on a crisis when the weather is not cooperating. Now, like these 2 weeks we have had a lot of challenges from rain, and you will find many of the farmers are experiencing rotting, sprouting of the crops. So those are some of the things that are really impacting and affecting the farmer.
In addition, most dryers imported by both national and county government agencies, as well as millers and private farmers, are customized for shelled maize only. The millers, who are at the end of the line to process maize grain into flour, also face a daunting task of ensuring quality of grain delivered to them by suppliers. Mr. Hossam Mohammed, the manager of Kitale Industries Limited, attests that the company has to carry out thorough tests on maize supplied to them for aflatoxin and moisture content. Suppliers whose maize is found to fall short of the required moisture content of 13% and aflatoxins are turned away, meaning more losses to the suppliers.
Mimi naitwa Selin Wanjiku. Nashughulika, mimi ni mkulima na mimi ni mfanya biashara kwa mahindi. Kwanza kuanika gharama iko juu kwa sababu ukianika leo si ati itakauka na 1 day ama 2 days. Hiyo mahindi inakaa chini like 7 days to 2 weeks. Sasa ile mahindi kitarajia ikauke ikuwe moisture mzuri, unakuja unakuta tayari imeharibiwa na maji. Haya mahindi ambayo tunaanika tunapeleka kwa millers ya kutumiwa na wanadamu, ndio inashagwa, wananchi wanapata unga. Tunapelekanga saa ingine unakuta inasemekana iko aflatoxin, moisture inarejectiwa. Huwezi rudishia mkulima kwa sababu once mkulima mumwachana na yeye, umemlipa pesa yake, ni hivyo. Inabidi ubebane na hiyo gharama. Kama tungepata njia ya kuweza suluhisho, yani ya kuweza kuanika haya mahindi, nafikiri ingetusaidia sana. Shida sasa ni hiyo tu, inabidi tuanikie kwa uwanja, kwa mahema.
This county is considered the breadbasket of the country because of its high potential for maize production. We produce on average about 5 million bags per year, and previously we used to do even up to 7 million bags. And there has been a combination of factors which has led to the low productivity. The county government has tried to work on the soil health issues. There has been the issue of climate change, the issue of pests and diseases, which we have tried to handle. And above all, the post-harvest losses currently stand at about 30%. And for the last 3 years, because of the very wet weather, farmers have experienced huge losses because the rains have been coming at the time that the harvesting season is on. As a county government, we have tried our best to avail dryers. Currently we have 4 dryers. 2 of them are a bit outdated, they are not very efficient, but recently we bought 2 dryers which are modern and mobile, but of course they cannot cope with the work and with the demand that the farmers have. So we've always, as a county government, looked out for other possibilities, other innovations that farmers can actually adopt so that we can work together to help manage the post-harvest losses. The amount of food we lose through post-harvest losses, if it can be managed to below 10%, then this country would be food secure and there would be no need even to do the importation. So currently, apart from the sun drying and the use of tarpaulins, now the few dryers that we are having as a county government, and what exists with the National Cereals and Produce Board. The National Cereals and Produce Board also has some dryers, but the dryers currently at National Cereals and Produce Board Kitale and Moi Bridge, the capacity is about 800 bags per cycle. It means that as a farmer, if you don't have 800 bags, you may not be able to utilize that facility. So in essence, it means that those facilities are mainly catering for the large-scale farmers. That leaves the small-scale farmer without much option. The National Cereals and Produce Board, what they are charging is about 34 shillings per 1% moisture drop. And most of the maize by the time the farmers are harvesting, the moisture content is between 25 to 30%. So it means to reduce that moisture content to 13%, the farmers are incurring almost to over 200 shillings to dry 190 kilo bag. At the county level, we have tried to subsidize that to half that amount, but still at the end of the day, you realize that it is still costly for the farmer. Sometimes our dryers break down. You know, it's a machine, it can break down.
In the midst of all these challenges, a homegrown solution has been sought to help farmers mitigate the vagaries of nature during the post-harvest period. Moi University, through a collaboration with the University of Kassel in Germany, has come up with an innovation of a moisture meter and cobbed maize dryer to address this menacing challenge. The innovation is led by Dr. Isaiah Etemo Michilwa in partnership with Professor Dr. Oliver Hensel, who heads the Department of Agricultural Engineering at the University of Kassel in Germany. Dr. Michilwa is a lecturer in Moi University School of Engineering, Department of Mechanical, Production and Energy Engineering.
Maize is a very important crop to this country. It is our main staple. Research tells us the per capita consumption is over 90 kilos. Maize is a good crop. When it grows on the field, it looks nice. From the germination, it is a beautiful crop to plant. But the challenges usually start in the post-harvest, when the maize is ready for harvesting. The whole phenomenon of rotten maize is something that I used to think was normal until when I got my opportunity to travel to Germany to study. And I was able to experience what farmers out there who grow maize go through, because there the weather is a lot kinder to them, and you rarely have these incidents. Actually, I discovered that the whole concept of rotten maize is probably just specific to people like us who are in the tropics, where there is a lot of humidity and a lot of rainfall. I sought to solve this problem. Aflatoxins, as you are aware, are a recurrent problem in Kenya. Every 3-4 years, we have news headlines highlighting either issues with the grain flour being contaminated and withdrawn from supermarkets.
A spot check in various supermarkets across Nairobi shows that almost all the 27 brands listed by the Kenya Bureau of Standards have already been removed from the shelves. KEB says the brands have high aflatoxin levels and should therefore not be sold to the public until further notice.
Or people dying. I think there was, in one of the years we had a number of people who died in the Ukambani area from consuming maize that was highly contaminated by aflatoxins. Aflatoxins largely arise because of the high humidity and temperature conditions prevailing in the crop. They attack the crop while still in the fields, and if it is not well dried and put in storage where there is not enough movement of air, then the molds continue to grow and expand and populate the maize, and eventually the maize becomes unfit for human consumption. Of course, there are many other strategies that have been employed, including Aflasafe, which is a special product that you put in and introduces special fungi to outcompete the bad fungi. But one of the key strategies is to harvest early. We have to move to limit the time our crop spends drying under natural conditions, because we really do not have enough sunshine. Our air lacks the capacity for natural drying. So it takes too long, and by the time our foods dry, they are already contaminated. In short, we have to mechanize. And that has been what we have been doing. I have come up with a technology that tries to address the challenges of mechanization. Because when you're mechanizing, it's not just a matter of introducing equipment that can move air or equipment that can generate heat. We're asking ourselves, where are we getting this heat from?
The innovation is christened the Etemo Dryer.
The project is largely focused on cobbed maize drying. And why we focus on drying maize on the cob is because once the maize attains physiological maturity, the good thing is to extract it. Physiological maturity, normally you can tell from the silks at the top, and once you can tell from the appearance of the cob. Usually at physiological maturity, the moisture of the cob is around 35 to 40%. So at that stage, really there is very little damage in the field. One, from excess moisture, and number two, from insects. So if we can get it out of the field at that stage and dry it, then we will have done well.
The project was funded through a research grant from the German Federal Ministry of Education and Research under the first German Africa Innovation Incentive Award, with additional support from Volkswagen Foundation.
What we try to focus on in my project is renewable energies. The sun sometimes is abundant, even though not always, but we can utilize the sun. Then secondly, you can see all around here, there are the maize stalks. That is biomass, because when the sun shines and the crop is growing, that energy is stored inside the stalks. So if we can find a way to harness that energy and use the same energy to dry the maize, then that would be a good thing.
Dr. Mchilwa developed the project based on a collaborative design model, establishing dialogue between academics and artisans with a view to learning from each other and co-creating a lasting solution to farmers' problems so as to ensure food and nutrition security in the country. Working in collaboration with Kitale Juakali, the project now stands tall at Maridadi Farm Enterprise, just a stone throw away from Kitale flyover.
We have incorporated components that can be built by our local artisans. So we have a component which is a frame built by a carpenter. We have the framework. The framework has been built by our welders and fabricators. And the framework just takes the structure of a metallic crib, given enough structural strength to hold that weight of maize. During the day, we try to maximize on capturing the heat from the sun, and the tent does that well. It's clear at the top, also to capture the sun rays and to aid the drying. So that also helps to reduce on the fuel consumption. So we have the tents built by the people with the tailors.
Kwa majina naitwa Josephat Okere na Mkuru. Mimi ndio mshonaji, na hii kazi nimeifanya kwa muda. na kwa hakika kusema kweli hii kazi imenipa nafasi nzuri sana katika maishani mwangu kujimudu kimaisha. Kitu cha kwanza, kabla tuweze kutengeneza hayo mashine, tunanunua material tuwe nayo tayari, alafu tunaiandaa kwa kuweka measurement sahihi. Tukishapata measurement, tunaitengeneza kulingana vile inatakana ifunge, ndio ionekane at least isingishe maji ndani, tunaitengeneza vizuri. Na kisha baadaye tukishaimaliza tunapata nafasi sasa kwenda kuivalisha, kuipima, hakikisha imeingiana vizuri kona zote kuanzia juu mpaka chini. Hakika nimejifunza vitu mingi, maana tangu nizaliwe sijaiona mashini kama haya yakifanya. Hii ndio mara yangu ya kwanza.
It enables farmers to have their produce dried faster in a more hygienic environment to maintain quality. Cobbed maize to be loaded into the dryer is first pre-selected to ensure no rotten, moldy or germinated cobs go in. It is important to harvest early after the maize matures on the field to minimize losses from excessively wet weather, theft, and damage from rodents and weevils.
This is the very first step. We receive the maize. The maize is loaded manually into the dryer, and then once we have finished the process, we will now start the firing process to remove the moisture from the maize cobs. These are around 100 cob bags. And what is important is when the maize is coming from the farm, it should be free of the husks. It should have been well dehusked. Secondly, if there was any rotten maize in the process of harvesting, that should have been separated, because if you take it into the dryer with the rotten maize will affect the rest. The moisture content should be around an average of 25%. But this device can, the machine that we built can take maize with moisture contents up to 35%. One of the reasons why we focus again on cobbed maize is because of its size. When you put it in a pile, it offers very little resistance to the movement of air. And that means we don't have to use very big fans. You don't have to engage very big or powerful fans to force air through the grain. And that means our power consumption is very little. With the dryer that we have, with just as little as 160 watts, you're able to operate this. That means you can also put in solar panels. And when there's enough sunshine, you don't have to connect to the power grid. And at night, you have power, you can connect. It still isn't too much. But if you have a generator, a portable generator, that size is still a small. You just need a small generator to run this. We have a smart unit that is incorporated to this structure. And this device is able to link the fans with the solar panel and the Kenya Power. And what it does is it is able to detect when there's enough sunshine, and it shuts off the grid and strictly uses energy from the sun. But in the event that we don't have enough sunshine, then it's able to integrate now energy from the power line. When we have a blackout, because we know blackouts can be a challenge, and drying is a very sensitive process. Once you begin, it's very important that you do not interrupt the process. The process, you let it run. So we have a battery. We have also battery-based storage, which can mitigate blackouts up to 2, 3, 4 hours of a blackout. They can withstand that, then reintegrate the power when it comes back on, and store the recharged battery in the period when there is power for the next emergency. Then for the dryer to work, we now have to have a heat source. The heat source, we generate heat by burning the same maize cobs, and the same facility can also burn the stalks. Whatever is available, we are trying to make use of what is available within this region. You have the bed, then you have a chamber at the bottom where you introduce the air. As you force the air into the bottom, the air is diverted and is distributed through the batch of the maize. So as air moves, if air normally has capacity to carry water, and the hotter the air, the more the capacity to carry water. So that is why we heat the air. So in this case, we have 2 sides to this dryer. There's the drying end, and there's the air conditioning end where we heat and deal with the moisture that has been collected. So once we force the air, we heat the air, we force the hot air through the grain. This warm air collects moisture. It collects moisture from the surface of the grain continuously. We have a burner that generates a hot surface, and we have this air rubbing against this hot surface. And we know when you hit air that has humidity in it, it tends to expand, pushes against the walls, but we have vents. So to equalize, you have some of it escaping and escaping with water. So we have that process. So it's more a very efficient process. This dryer is able to consume only 5 kilograms of maize cobs per hour. The capacity of the dryer is around 150 cob bags. To dry the whole batch, you probably will need around 30 bags. So you'll always have an excess of maize cobs left from the process.
Inside the dryer is fitted with a thermohygrometer that measures temperature and relative humidity of the air surrounding the cobbed maize. The thermohygrometer is linked to an Android application, making it easy to monitor the goings-on in the dryer using a phone from as far away as 50 meters.
The one that is at the bottom that is monitoring the chamber ensures that you're able to control the drying, not to overheat the grain, because you want the kernels when you're through the drying to be able to germinate, to maintain viability. We know some farmers like to recycle or make their own seed. So at the top, we have this one that tells you, because it's monitoring the amount of water in the air. At the beginning, it will sense a lot of humidity, and you can tell it. Typically, it reads values around 90%. But after some time, when the surface water is complete, and the grain has to migrate from the inside of the grain to out, then the relative humidity begins to drop. And you're able to see that. Then through research, we have determined an optimal level where you can now tell this grain is dry. Typically, when your sensor is giving indications above 65 to 68%, it's an indication that the maize is dry, it's ready to be extracted.
Before the cobbed maize is offloaded from the dryer, its moisture content is measured using either the moisture metering bottle innovation or a conventional moisture meter. Maize with a moisture content of 13.5% is deemed to have been sufficiently dried for storage.
I would now want to demonstrate how to measure moisture content in grains, and I will be introducing an innovation that I developed called the moisture metering bottle, in short the MOTL. This is a low-cost device that I developed that can be used by farmers. I developed this in the year 2014, and in the year 2015 at the University of Kassel in Germany, I won an award for this device. Moisture content is significant in grains because it helps to determine how well the grains will store. Microbes, microorganisms, fungi thrive when there is enough water to support their growth and metabolism. And in maize, usually when the moisture content is above 13.5, there is enough moisture for this fungi to grow. And in storage, those fungi will contaminate the grain. So it is important before you move your produce into some storage facility that you extract this excess water so that the microbes will not be able to germinate and cause spoilage. So I start off with this device. It's called the moisture metering bottle. It simply uses a sensor, a temperature humidity sensor, what we call a thermohygrometer. This is a device that measures the quantity of water within the air. So when you take grain like I have here and you load it in, and after sealing this device, what happens is this: because there is water inside the grain and there's also water on the surface of the grain, that water will begin to evaporate into the air within the chamber. And the evaporation continues until a certain point where equilibrium is attained between the water in the air and the water contained inside the grain itself. So once that equilibrium has been attained, typically it takes around 30 minutes. When you lock this up, you just leave it in the shade, away from a heat source, away from direct sunshine. You try to avoid holding it because your body temperature will also affect the readings. So keep it away. Then after 30 minutes, you come and take the reading. Here you see on the sensor, there are two readings. There's the bigger and there's the smaller at the top. The bigger readings here for the relative humidity, what we're calling the humidity at equilibrium between the air and the grain. And right now you can see this is because I left the grain in overnight, and this grain is fairly wet. It's giving an indication of 99%. That is excess moisture. So for us to determine whether it is safe for storage, that reading should not be more than 70%. At 70%, if you are to test the moisture content within the grain now, this is not the moisture content, it's just the water in the air. But if you are to take the grain and now test the moisture content, when this reads 70, then the moisture content is around 13.5, which is what is recommended for grain storage, and to store safely for 6 months or over. And the thinking was to help farmers, because I know farmers, when they want to detect moisture, you will find that some of them either bite the grain, or you will find some of them try to rattle it, listen to the sound to find out whether it is dry enough. But those techniques are not good enough. They will not give you the right indication of moisture content. So it is good to have equipment, and that's why we developed this. This that I have here is one of the conventional devices used to measure moisture content in grain and maize in particular. It is fairly accurate. It is faster than this device that I have shown you, but the only challenge is the price and the availability. These devices are not readily available, and secondly, the price. This device that I have here costs around 450 euros. That could be probably just around 50,000 Kenya shillings, which for the small farmer is really out of reach. In contrast, this device will cost the farmer 1,000 shillings or less. So 50,000, 1,000 shillings. So this really now brings the technology into the realm that we can get to the small farmers.
The dryer is environmentally friendly since it uses solar energy, and in the absence of solar, it uses crop residues to generate heat and energy, hence making it cheaper and efficient to operate.
I'm also informed that this technology can also use to dry the vegetables. You realize that very many of our farmers use the rain-fed agriculture. And what happens is that when there is rain, there is a lot of vegetables which go to waste. With such a technology and with the use of trays, farmers can dry those vegetables and preserve them, because dried vegetables can stay even for up to 1 year and beyond. The farmers can dry the vegetables when there is excess, and then these vegetables can be utilized during the dry season, because at the end of the day, we are not just talking about food security, just having a full stomach, but the country now is looking at food and nutrition security, which means we need a combination of the grains, the vegetables, the meats, what have you. Here, we are seeing this technology is cheap, relatively cheap for the farmer. So, from where I sit as a CEC and the people who drive policy, this is a technology that I would advocate, and I would really want, as a county, that we get a buy-in and adopt, and also sell it to the other people who are also doing maize and other grains that require drying, because this technology is sustainable.
The HMO can be able to dry not only maize, but it can be able to dry other things. It can dry vegetables, like for instance, those people are dealing with tobacco. It can be able to dry even fish. We can be able to make the HMO dryer dry things like even timber and also fruits. The technology uses a simple way of generating heat, which can be generated by so many other things which are available locally, what we call the biomass. And this biomass, you can use firewood. We can be able to use also things like biogas. We can generate some energy using biodiesel or bioethanol. And also we can be able to generate heat even if you use the charcoal. HMO dryer, it can be also be used to dry even wounds for construction. So it is a very good idea which has come up at the right time when we have rains, for instance, in case of maize, and it can be used for drying maize so that you can reduce aflatoxin.
So it is something that I am really excited about. I am grateful for all the partners that joined me on this project. I have not mentioned, besides the professor in Germany, Professor Hensel, we had Dr. Franz Roman, we had Dr. Margareta Lelea, who is a human geographer, who really helped us with the communications in between the different parties on the team. We also had input from a scientist from Ghana called Dr. Joseph Korese, whom I really would want to acknowledge. And in Nigeria, one of my mentors was Professor Olusegun Atanda. Thank you so much. Coming back to Kenya here, we collaborated with Dr. Duncan Buge from the University of Nairobi, and locally at Moi University, my mentor, Professor Peter Omboto. To all of them, that effort has borne fruit. I think we really should be grateful.